We'll turn first to Joyce, Christopher's mother. Joyce, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is a very difficult date for your family. And in fact, this is the first such event that you've spoken at. Could you please tell us a bit about your son, who he was, what happened to him, and what the campaign for justice has been like for your family ever since? No.
Okay. Thanks, Rebecca. It's always a privilege to talk about Chris. Chris, he loved stories. As a child, he loved telling them, hearing them, and reading them. And as a journalist, he sought to write some of the world's untold stories. Chris was uncompromising in his search for truth. He looked for answers even when personal risk was required. And now John and I are on the front lines, relentlessly seeking the truth of the events of August 26, 2017. For the past 3 years, the pursuit of accountability and justice have become central to our lives. The loss of Chris is unbearable. The pain of it does not ease. He was a son who kept in touch with us wherever he was. We received phone calls from Lahore, from Delhi, and the front lines of Eastern Ukraine. We enjoyed a vibrant and healthy relationship. Chris loved home and family. He grew up in a comfortable suburban community, but he didn't embrace the values and coziness of a suburban lifestyle. He was always more interested in those who did not have the comforts and security that people around him took for granted. He did not like the complacency and insularity of such a middle-class lifestyle. He wanted to know about people who did not have those privileges. He was drawn to regions of the world where there was not the assumption of security, democratic norms, the rule of law, or a functional state. Chris was interested in places where democracy was non-existent or seriously challenged. He was interested in the willingness of a people to challenge corrupt governments, encroachments to their land, their families, their nations. These are the stories that Chris sought to tell. While he was working on a degree in European history, an Oxford professor suggested that Chris might be far more interested in seeing history being made rather than reading about it in the library. So he went to Eastern Ukraine during spring break 2014. He was transformed by what he witnessed there. He eventually moved to Kyiv and immersed himself in the life and history of the country. For 3 years, he reported on the fault lines and the stresses within Ukraine. In August 2017, Chris embarked on a new challenge. He'd always been interested in the African continent. In fact, he wrote both his undergraduate and graduate dissertation on regions of Africa. Chris traveled to South Sudan to cover the underreported civil war there, embedding with the SPLA-IO, a rebel faction attempting to overthrow the established government in Juba. He wanted to know who the rebels were, why they fought, who they left behind to be in this community of soldiers. These rebels were aged from 8 to 80. They needed to accept and trust him. So he lived as they did. He slept in a mud hut. He ate community meals cooked in an iron pot over an open fire, and Chris drank from their water supply. He sacrificed comfort, suspended judgment, and simply observed. He immersed himself fully. Chris had been with the soldiers for more than 3 weeks, listening to the stories of their lives, their losses, their fears and motivations before he was targeted by government forces on August 26, 2017, in a skirmish in Kaya, South Sudan. We spoke with Chris the night before he lost his life. The company was moving out that evening, to walk through miles of bush to capture munition supplies. We said, would he consider writing a piece that covered the embed today, to share with his readers the pain the families of these men suffered at the hand of those in power? Chris's dedication to his journalism was absolute. He felt he must bear witness to the battle. He felt the story would not be complete otherwise. Chris had to see it through. It's daunting and painful to recount this. In his memory, and with the same level of perseverance he gave to his craft, we have been pursuing the events that led to his tragic and untimely death. Just as Chris sought the truth of the tragedies and difficulties of others, we've been working to establish the circumstances of his killing every day for 3 years. The very governments and institutions whose duty is to help us find the truth have failed to support us at every key juncture over the past 3 years. We know Chris was killed by a member of the South Sudanese Armed Forces, and that his killing and treatment of his body post-mortem are likely to constitute war crimes. We, along with the legal team and leadership of Reporters Without Borders, will continue to demand a meaningful investigation. In our deep desire to secure justice and accountability for the wrongful killing of our son, who is a civilian and a journalist, armed only with a camera, and to remind states that they cannot suppress freedom by killing journalists with impunity, we will continue to demand this investigation. Like Chris, we must see this through. John and I feel like we've been hitting our heads against a wall. Certified letters to the FBI requesting a full and transparent investigation from the legal team, our senators and from us have received a cursory response at best, and at worst, no response at all. Letters to South Sudanese officials have received no acknowledgement. Meetings with ambassadors and consular staff have produced no movement in Chris's case. So we wonder, what does it take to be heard? We ask that a bright light be shed on the circumstances of Chris's killing. We call on governments and institutions to hold the South Sudanese military accountable for the wrongful death of our son. A transparent investigation is the first step. Accountability and justice for Chris must follow. By demanding the accountability of governments and their institutions, we create a safer world for journalists and we bolster press freedom. We must see this through.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And I think all of us here are absolutely dedicated to helping you to see this through.